Now, programming from the Illinois Channel, an independent, nonpartisan corporation formed to provide nonpartisan coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. For more information on the Illinois Channel, please visit our website at www.illinoischannel.org.
Just ahead, Governor Pat Quinn delivers the State of the State address, in which he reviews many of the accomplishments that have taken place over the last 5 years since he was sworn into office. He also lays out his agenda for the spring legislative session. Then, in about 45 minutes from now, we get the reaction to the governor's address from Democrat and Republican lawmakers, as they say what they liked and what concerns they have regarding the governor's agenda. And in about 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz talks with an expert about the growing economic and cultural ties between the United States and South America. That's all just ahead after this brief note.
The Illinois Channel salutes our advisory council members, leaders in business, education, law, medicine, and other fields from across Illinois.
I'm Mark Beal, Executive Director of the Chemical Industry Council of Illinois. We represent over 220 companies, employing almost 46,000 people at over 700 facilities located across Illinois. These are the kind of jobs any state would wish to have, with an average annual wage of over $81,000 per year. To keep these kind of quality jobs in Illinois means we need to keep a competitive business climate with other states. Our tax rates, regulations, transportation infrastructure, the quality and education of our workers, these factors all combine to create a climate that's going to attract new businesses or in some cases keep them away. That's why the Chemical Industry Council of Illinois supports the work of the Illinois Channel. They bring us into the Capitol to hear debate on such issues as reforming the workers' compensation system, health care reform, and the debate over changing the state's pensions. These are among the issues covered by the Illinois Channel that affect all of us. Taken together, they create a business climate that will keep the Illinois economy growing or cause it to slip into further decline. That's why we all need to know what's happening on policy issues affecting our state and our communities. That's why I watch the Illinois Channel, and I hope you do too. The Illinois Channel. It works for all of us.
Next, from the House chamber in the state capitol, Governor Pat Quinn delivers the 2014 State of the State address. This address was held on the 5th anniversary of the governor's being sworn into office following the impeachment of Rod Blagojevich. Governor Quinn reviews some of the accomplishments of the last 5 years and lays out an agenda for the spring legislative session. This runs about 45 minutes.
President Cullerton and Speaker Madigan, Leader Radonio and Leader Durkin, Lieutenant Governor Simon and Attorney General Madigan, Secretary White, Treasurer Rutherford, members of the General Assembly, and distinguished guests. Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by recognizing two public servants who gave their full measure of devotion to all of us on Monday night. Illinois tollway worker Vincent Petrella lost his life doing his job. Vincent was struck and killed on I-88 while helping a truck driver in distress. He served with the tollway for 13 years. He leaves his wife Sandra and 2 young children behind, and we ask God to bless his immortal soul. Illinois State Police Trooper Douglas Balder was with Vincent that night. At this hour, Trooper Balder is battling for his life at Loyola University Medical Center in Maywood. We thank him for his ethic of service, and we pray for his recovery. So please join me now in a moment of silence and prayer for Vincent Petrella and Trooper Douglas Balder. Thank you. In Illinois, we honor our heroes, and we're grateful for their service. And I'd like to welcome two more Illinois heroes, Sergeant Brent Adkins and Sergeant Benjamin Greist of the Illinois National Guard. Shortly after midnight, on Monday, January 6th, they answered the call. Multiple semis had jackknifed and caused a pileup on I-57 and I-70 near Effingham. The drifts were so thick and the snow falling so hard that even our snowplows could not clear the way. And more than 400 motorists were stranded in wind chills of 30 degrees below. Sergeant Adkins and Sergeant Greist traveled from the National Guard Armory in Mattoon through Arctic conditions in the middle of the night with their wrecker in tow. That's a military vehicle that can lift more than 10 tons. They cleared the road and rescued hundreds of people. Thank you, sergeants, for getting the job done. Our Illinois National Guard is the best of the best, and we're very and profoundly grateful to every single member who volunteers for the Illinois National Guard. And we know that just weeks earlier, in November, many of our communities were devastated by deadly tornadoes. 8 people lost their lives, and 2,265 lost their homes. 6-year-old Brevin Hunter of Washington, Illinois, was one who lost his home. Brevin warned his mom to seek cover in their family's basement just moments before the tornado decimated their home. Brevin saved her life. Brevin and his family are here today, and let's give them applause. Way to go there, Brevin. Today and every day, we all belong to Washington, to Brookport, to Gifford, to New Minden, and to Diamond. We know that emergencies test the preparedness and resilience of our government and of our people. And we have been well tested. In the last 5 years, Illinois has been through 11 natural disasters. We've watched droughts plague our farmers, the backbone of our economy. We saw last April's pervasive flooding in 49 counties. We remember the tragic tornado in Harrisburg just 2 years ago. Extreme weather is a reality with devastating effects, and it demands our constant readiness. And each and every time, our state workers, our service members, and our first responders have gotten the job done. And I think it's important that we realize that it isn't just natural disasters were all that we managed in the past 5 years. Some of the disasters were of man-made variety. Exactly 5 years ago this day, I was sworn in as governor at Illinois' darkest moment. We were facing an unprecedented triple crisis of government corruption, economic collapse, and financial instability. We had one former governor in jail and another one on the way to jail. And our economy had plunged into the worst recession since the Great Depression, brought to its knees by greedy and corrupt financiers. And our financial house was on fire, set ablaze by decades of mismanagement and an utter lack of willingness to make tough calls. Hard-working people in Illinois lost their jobs, their homes, and their faith in those they'd entrusted with their votes. It was a perfect storm, and it left destruction in its path. We all knew that repairing the damage that had been done over decades would not happen overnight. But over the past 5 years, we've rebuilt, one hard step at a time, and we've been getting the job done. Illinois is making a comeback. First, we restored integrity to state government, passing a strong new ethics code, campaign finance reform, and a new constitutional amendment to allow voters to recall any governor guilty of corruption. When I took the oath of office, state government hadn't properly invested in our infrastructure in 10 years. But within 10 weeks, we passed the largest construction program in Illinois history. So far, we've built and repaired 7,595 miles of road, 1,311 bridges, and 978 schools. 5 years ago, Illinois did not guarantee equal rights to all couples. Our state did not even provide civil unions. Today, we embrace full marriage equality. It's the law of the land. And unlike our predecessors, we've made the tough calls to balance our budget. We cut more than $1 billion in state spending. We overhauled our Medicaid program to save taxpayers over $2 billion. And even as we took hard steps to return Illinois to sound financial footing, we did it with compassion, preserving the safety net to protect the most vulnerable. We also accomplished comprehensive pension reform, something that no governor or legislature had been able to do. Previous governors and legislators from both parties created the pension crisis. They did not make the required payments into the pension funds. There was no fiscal accountability, and it led to a culture of instability, shaking the confidence of taxpayers and businesses. Resolving Illinois' pension crisis was the tallest task of all. But together, we got the job done. Since I took office, we have made the full pension payment every single year. We passed the historic pension reform law for new employees in 2010. And last year, we enacted necessary and comprehensive pension reform that Moody's said may be the largest reform package implemented by any state in the nation. Thanks to all of you who voted yes. And a special thank you for the hard work of the Legislative Conference Committee members, Senator Raoul, Representative Nekritz, Senator Biss, Representative Sanger, Representative Zalewski, Senator Murphy, Senator Brady, and Representative Tracy. And thank you, House Speaker Mike Madigan, and Senate President John Cullerton, and Leader Christine Radogno, and Leader Jim Durkin. It was hard, it was painful, it took political courage, but together we got the job done. Today we can tell the people of Illinois, we stopped the bleeding, we turned the corner, and Illinois is making a comeback. But now, as we head into 2014, we know we have more work to do. That's why today I'm laying out a 5-year blueprint for jobs and economic growth in Illinois. It's a blueprint that builds on the foundation we've laid these past 5 years. And it's a blueprint that recognizes that a truly strong economy relies not just on jobs, but on fairness and inclusion. If we follow this blueprint, we'll do 3 things: create more jobs, deliver stronger education, and build an economy that works for everyone. Of course, economic growth always starts with jobs, and we've seen progress on this front. Since the recovery began in January of 2010, Illinois has added 280,000 private sector jobs. Unemployment was at 11.3% at the height of the Great Recession. And today, it's at its lowest point in almost 5 years. In fact, since last May, Illinois has led the Midwest in jobs, new jobs created. And 2 years ago, with the strong support of the Illinois Manufacturers Association and the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, we reformed our workers' compensation system and our unemployment insurance system. These reforms have saved hundreds of millions of dollars, but we know we have much more work to do. And we'll start with a renewed focus on small business. 3 out of every 4 Illinois employers are small businesses. And in the last 5 years, we've helped them. Through our Advantage Illinois program, we've provided loans and investments to help small business grow. One of them, All Cell, a new battery manufacturer on the southwest side of Chicago. All Cell has leveraged our programs to grow from 6 full-time employees to 40 in just 4 years. And today, they're exporting all over the world. All Cell's founder and CEO, Saeed Al-Holjaj, is with us here today. Saeed, we thank you and salute you and all of our small businesses for your hard work. They're all getting the job done, but we have to do more to support our small businesses, especially as they get started. In Illinois, new businesses have long paid a $500 LLC fee when they open up shop. Let's reduce this fee to $39, the lowest in the nation, and provide a boost to our innovators. This small but important step will encourage entrepreneurs to start their business and put more people to work right here in Illinois. And we won't stop there. Today I'm issuing an executive order to establish a small business advocate whose sole focus will be to examine policies and proposals through the lens of how they impact Illinois small businesses. Let's make life easier for our small businesses and make sure small business always means big business in Illinois. In the past 5 years, we've also worked to level the playing field for minority and women-owned businesses. We established a new revolving loan program at IDOT, thanks to the great work of Senator Maddie Hunter. And we expanded contracting goals for these small businesses. As a result, we've increased state contracts to minority and women-owned firms by nearly 60%. Since I took office, an increase of 1,921 contracts worth more than $120 million. In the Metro East, African-American businesses and workers helped build the new Stan Musial Veterans Memorial Bridge over the Mississippi River, which we will soon dedicate. They're getting the job done, and our businesses need modern bridges, modern highways and railroads and water systems. A sound infrastructure is critical to a strong economy. In the last 5 years, through our Illinois Jobs Now program, we've invested more than $31 billion into our infrastructure, and this has supported more than 400,000 jobs. Thanks to these investments, we constructed the Morgan Street Bridge in Rockford. We're building a wider Route 13 in southern Illinois. We're expanding the John Deere Expressway in the Quad Cities, and construction is underway on the new Circle Interchange to relieve congestion on the Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Dan Ryan expressways. After years of gridlock, we're moving forward on our plan to build a new South Suburban Airport, and we're making the Ileana Expressway a reality, which will create thousands of jobs and strengthen our position as the largest inland port in the nation. Through our Clean Water Initiative, we're investing more than $1 billion in clean water and creating 28,000 jobs along the way. And these are good jobs, jobs for welders, for cement masons, for truck drivers, for operating engineers, for pipe fitters, for painters, for carpenters, for laborers. Through these projects, we're replacing ancient water mains, upgrading sewers, and building wastewater treatment plants all over our state, including in Pekin, in Decatur, in Kankakee, in Rockford, Spring Valley, and Murfreesboro. To date, we received 91 clean water applications from communities across Illinois. And this year, we'll expand our Clean Water Initiative and double this investment to include critical stormwater and flood control projects. When it comes to creating the infrastructure we need for a strong economy, we've been getting the job done. And there's more work to do. We've been also making progress when it comes to preparing our workforce for the 21st century jobs. Just on IllinoisJobLink.com, our employment opportunity website, there are more than 130,000 jobs available right now. But many of these jobs require very specific skills. And that's why we're preparing our workers for high-skill, in-demand jobs. That's a top priority. To help us fill those jobs, we've mobilized our education system behind our 60 by 2025 goal. We want 60% of our adult workforce to have a degree or a career certificate by the year 2025. And we've been exceeding our targets every year on this mission. Since 2008, our community colleges have grown the number of people graduating with degrees or career certificates by more than 30%. We've also expanded dual enrollment and early college opportunities for qualified students. But we can't finish the job if deserving students aren't able to afford a college education. So over the next 5 years, let's double the number of MAP college scholarships for students in need in Illinois. Our MAP scholarship program today helps about 140,000 students go to college. Students like Shamari Jackson and Adriana Rivas and Howard Brown, who are here today. By doubling the number of MAP scholarships, we can make sure deserving students in need are equipped to excel in the 21st century workplace. Another way that we can prepare our young people to succeed is through workplace experience. That's why we should expand our youth and young adult conservation corps. This will help at-risk young people get a job and gain valuable training and work experience. Through these programs, our young people will learn important skills and develop those skills while doing necessary work in state and local parks and conservation areas all across Illinois. Now, there's no question that our veterans already have strong skills, and we're making sure those skills count here in Illinois. Last year, I issued an executive order mandating the assessment of military training against our state licensing requirements. Thanks to the work that followed that executive order, we received funding from the National Governors Association. And in the coming academic year, we will launch veteran bridge programs for military medics to attain LPN degrees at Joliet Junior College, the College of DuPage, and Illinois Central College in Peoria. Our veterans got the job done for us when they served in uniform, and now we're getting the job done for them, making sure their training counts right here in Illinois. And part of our... Part of our job strategy is investing in industries that are the future of the 21st century economy. That's why we invested in 1871, the digital hub in the Merchandise Mart that has grown over 200 startups and created more than 1,000 jobs in just 2 years. And that's why now we're going to invest in a new biohub for pharmaceutical, medical device, and health IT startups. Our life science industry in Illinois has a $98 billion economic footprint, and our new biohub is going to drive even more economic growth in that sector. And we should never forget, Illinois has always been a manufacturing hub, especially our auto manufacturers and their suppliers. When I took office, Chrysler employed just 200 people at its Belvedere plant. We partnered with Chrysler, and now Chrysler employs more than 4,700 workers at that same plant. 5 years ago, Ford had just one shift at its plant on the Chicago South Side. It had a total of 1,600 workers. We worked with Ford, and now Ford has 3 shifts with more than 5,100 workers. And in the last year alone, we've promoted Illinois around the world and gotten results. After my trade mission to Canada for PAL, a company that upgrades water systems, moved their North American headquarters to Elgin. After my trade mission to Germany, Rittal, an international manufacturer of IT and electrical enclosures, moved their North American headquarters from Ohio to Schaumburg. After our meetings in Japan, Nippon Sharyo, a world-class high-speed rail car manufacturer, chose Illinois for their expansion. And after meeting with Denmark's Grundfos, the largest water pump manufacturer in the world, they moved their North American headquarters to Downers Grove. That's more jobs and more opportunities for Illinois workers. Economy also demands quality public education for all our students. And that starts with good teachers. Teachers change lives for the good. And in Illinois, we honor our teachers, and we appreciate their hard work. In the last 5 years, we've been getting the job done on education reform. Parents are now empowered with a report card on their children's schools. Teacher evaluations have strong benchmarks, and performance is prioritized over tenure. In fact, our reforms have become a model for the nation, but our unfinished job on education starts where it matters most, in early childhood. Study after study has shown that high-quality early childhood education provides the best return of any public investment we can make, more than $7 for every dollar invested. That's why our state invests in programs serving our at-risk children from birth all the way to kindergarten. Since I've taken office, I've always fought to preserve early childhood education from radical budget cuts. And we found a way to invest $45 million to build early childhood centers in high-need areas, such as Dalton and Kankakee and Cicero. Our state actually leads the nation in the number of 3-year-olds attending preschool. But the status quo is not enough. It's not even close. The reality is more than a third of our youngest and most vulnerable children don't have the opportunity to attend early learning programs before they enter kindergarten. That's unacceptable. At-risk children who don't receive early childhood education are 25% more likely to drop out of school, 40% more likely to become a teen parent, 50% more likely to be placed in special education, 60% more likely to never attend college, and 70% more likely to be arrested for a violent crime. Scripture tells us where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's why today I'm calling for a bold Birth to 5 initiative that will be focused on 3 keys to a healthy child: prenatal care, access to early learning opportunities, and strong parent support. This initiative actually starts before a mother gives birth to her child by ensuring that she has access to prenatal services throughout her pregnancy. The good news is that prenatal care is already available to expectant mothers with modest incomes through our existing programs. Yet 25% of our low-income mothers are not receiving the prenatal care they need. Children pay the price. Mothers who do not receive prenatal care are 3 times more likely to give birth to a low-weight baby, which leads to increased risks for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, learning difficulties, and poor development. And also, the taxpayers pay the price. The cost of a birth where a baby is low weight is 5 times that of a normal birth. In addition to significant medical needs that eventually burden the system, these children often require early intervention services, remedial education, and grade repetition. And they lose out on the opportunity to achieve their full potential. Through our Birth to 5 initiative, over the next 5 years, we will work with our community partners, schools and hospitals and faith-based organizations to identify expectant mothers and connect them to prenatal services. We can ensure more children are born into the opportunities they deserve, and we can save taxpayers money. But we won't stop there. When the human brain is forming in a child's early life, it provides a critical window of opportunity to develop key academic, social, and cognitive skills that will determine success in school and in life. That's why the second pillar of our Birth to Five initiative is to provide every child with access to quality early learning opportunities. This is especially important for our African American and Latino children. Children like Cadence Marie Robinson, a 5-year-old who I recently met when I visited Spencer Technology Academy on the west side of Chicago. She sat on my knee, and she told me she was getting ready for kindergarten, and that she then read the numbers on my business card to me, something that she could do thanks to the Head Start program that she was attending. With strong early childhood education, kids like Cadence are set on a path for long-term success. We're really, really proud of you, Cadence. Thank you very much for what you're doing. We also see the importance of early childhood education in people like Christine Nickpon. Raised by a single mom in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, Christine's family struggled every month to make ends meet. Her mother always knew she wanted more for her children, and after seeing a flyer, she enrolled Christine in an early learning program. Christine then went to high school, then to college, and last year she completed her master's degree at the University of Chicago. Today, she's a fellow at the Latino Policy Forum and striving for a career in early childhood. Good job and good choice, Christine. In 2009, I established the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. And as a result, we've secured federal grants from Race to the Top that are allowing us to deliver high-quality early care and education programs. By properly investing in existing early learning programs and making this a budget priority, we can transform lives and save taxpayers money. But we can't stop there. A parent is a child's first teacher and best teacher. Moms and dads play the most important role in promoting the healthy development of their children. And not all families, unfortunately, are equipped with the information and support that they need to create healthy learning environments. That's why the third critical part of our Birth to Five initiative calls for ensuring parents make sure they have the support and services that they need. Family involvement during preschool is linked with stronger pre-literacy skills, math skills, social skills, and a positive attitude. So over the next 5 years, we'll connect families to a range of services and training opportunities to help them support their children's education. We'll expand our home visiting program and build on innovative community partnerships in places like East St. Louis, Aurora, North Lawndale, and in Marion. Once our Birth to Five initiative is fully implemented, mothers will be connected with prenatal care to ensure the healthy birth and development of their children. Children in Illinois will have access to quality early learning starting at birth, and parents will have the tools to lead their children towards success in school, college, careers, and beyond. Illinois can lead the nation in early childhood education. We already have the foundation in place, and now is the time to get the job done for Illinois' littlest. Giving our children the best start in life will lead to a stronger economy. But if our economy doesn't work for hardworking families, if it doesn't build the middle class, then our job is not done. The foundation of a strong economy is a strong middle class. In Illinois, we believe that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you deserve a fair shake. Every person, no matter what challenges he or she faces, deserves an opportunity. And that's why a big part of our blueprint today is ensuring all Illinoisans have the opportunity to pursue their dreams and enter the middle class. Building the middle class means keeping families in their homes. Thousands of hardworking Illinois families were in danger of losing their homes in the Great Recession. But we worked to fight foreclosure and promote affordable home ownership. We launched the Illinois Hardest Hit program to help working families keep their homes. More than 11,000 families in nearly every county in our state have received the foreclosure prevention support they needed. We also launched Welcome Home Heroes to give military families an opportunity to buy a home after sacrificing so much to protect our freedom. Thanks to Welcome Home Heroes, 1,150 military families have accessed more than $140 million to help buy their homes. And we haven't forgotten about our neighbors with developmental disabilities. That's why we financed more than 2,100 new supportive housing units to provide individuals with disabilities more choices in their communities. And that's why we honor the example set by the students of Downers Grove North High School. They demonstrated last year what including everyone is all about. Ann Wagner, who has Down syndrome, missed her sophomore and most of her junior year in high school when she was diagnosed with leukemia. But her friends did not forget her. Her lifelong friend, Mary Dorrell, nominated Ann to be homecoming queen. And the students of Downers Grove North voted for Ann Wagner to be their homecoming queen. Ann and Mary, we're very proud of you. Building the middle class also means providing everyone with decent health care. Today, 144,000 more people have health coverage in Illinois who didn't have it a year ago. And many more will find coverage in the coming year through getcoveredillinois.gov. Thank you, Senator Heather Staines, Representative Sarah Feigenholz, Representative Lisa Hernandez, and Representative Mary Flowers for your health care leadership. This year, we really have a job to do for our fellow citizens who are making the minimum wage of $8.25 an hour. Our minimum wage workers are doing hard work. They're putting in long hours, yet in too many instances, they are living in poverty. That's not right. That's not an Illinois value. That's not a fair shake. This is all about dignity and decency. I said it last year, and I'll say it again. It's time to raise Illinois' minimum wage to at least $10 an hour. Raising wages for workers who are doing some of the hardest jobs in our society is not just the right thing to do, it's also good for our economy. According to the Federal Reserve, for every dollar increase in the minimum wage, workers spend an additional $2,800 in their local communities. Minimum wage workers do not admire money in a bank vault. They spend it quickly and locally, a shot in the arm to our Main Street businesses. Let's get this job done and make our economy work for working families. And another way to help our working families is the Earned Income Tax Credit. A tax credit that President Reagan once said was the best anti-poverty, the best pro-family, the best job creation measure we could devise. In the last 5 years, we've doubled this tax relief for Illinois working families. And over the next 5 years, we should double it again. When more people enter the middle class, our economy grows. And one more thing. 43% of all workers in Illinois, more than 2.5 million people, have no right to a single earned sick day. Among our low-wage workers, the problem's even worse. 80% of low-wage workers don't receive any earned sick days. And we need to do something about this. We should provide at least 2 earned sick days for every worker in Illinois. We need to help our workers, especially our single parents, avoid that awful choice, dragging themselves from a sick bed to work or losing a day's pay, or maybe even their job. More than 70 years ago, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It's whether we provide enough for those who have too little." This, too, is about dignity and decency. Let's get this job done for working families in our state. 5 years ago, this very day, I stood before you and I asked for your prayers. Illinois was in a state of emergency, and there was no quick exit. There were no easy solutions. Recovery would require tough medicine and unpopular decisions, and it would take time. But by tackling hard issue after hard issue and never giving up, we are getting the job done. Illinois is making a comeback. The ratings agencies are sending positive signals for the first time in recent memory. The backlog of bills is going down. Unemployment is at its lowest point since the economy crashed. And according to the most recent Federal Reserve Bank report, in the next 6 months, Illinois is projected to have the best economic growth of the 5 largest states in America. Of course, we have financial challenges still ahead. And we'll be talking about the best way to meet those challenges in the upcoming budget. But the fact is, our recovery is strengthening every day. And we're leading that recovery in a way that cares for working families. Pope Francis has urged all of us to say no to a financial system which rules rather than serves. Say no to an economy of exclusion and inequality. Say no to a world in which the powerful feed upon the powerless. The Pope's right. Illinois is best served when we build and protect the middle class, when we open the door to those struggling to join the middle class. And by following the steps that I've outlined here today, creating more jobs, making early childhood education a top priority, and building an economy that works for everyone, we can create a stronger economy than ever before and reform Illinois for the next generation. So I ask today for your partnership. Together, we've weathered the worst man-made storm in our state's history. We've led Illinois' comeback, one hard step at a time. We've worked to repair decades of damage, and we're getting the job done. Let's keep our shoulder to the wheel and finish that job. Let's make the will of the people the law of the land. Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Hi, I'm Robert Lenz, president of the Abraham Lincoln Association. We're here today at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library in Springfield. Here in Illinois, the nation's 16th president developed from a young man to the leader who would hold together the entire nation during the Civil War. Lincoln's life is well documented. In fact, over 16,000 books have been written about him, and with more books and even movies now in the works. And yet, he died at only age 56, just having 4 years as president. So we might ask the question, why Lincoln? Why does this man's life resonate with so many people across the world and across the country years after he died in 1865? To answer why Lincoln's life matters so much to us today is really the mission of our Abraham Lincoln Association. Our association itself is over 100 years old, and since our founding, the mission of the association has been to promote authentic scholarship about Lincoln and his times. That's also why the Abraham Lincoln Association supports the work of the Illinois Channel. With its network of nearly 1.7 million cable homes, the Illinois Channel's coverage of Lincoln, from its recording of our past annual dinner speakers or its taping of the forum marking the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's inaugural, or its tour of Lincoln's home, all help to bring the scholarship and legacy of Lincoln to a broad audience. I'm Robert Lenz, President of the Abraham Lincoln Association. I'm also proud to serve on the Illinois Channel's Advisory Council. The Illinois Channel, it works for all of us.
Next, from the state capitol, we get reaction from lawmakers to the governor's State of the State address. We begin our coverage with comments from the Republican leaders in the House and Senate. This runs about 30 minutes.
So, everything's okay. We're on the road to recovery. Illinois is coming back, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't translate 8.6% unemployment as something we should be bragging about right now. We lost Cancer Center Treatments of America stated that they're going to Florida because of a bad business climate. So we've got to really turn this around. But you know, I appreciate the governor. You know, his job is to be positive, and he made a positive statement. I think some noble goals. But the fact is, there's a price tag that goes along with everything that is being stated. We have a budget address coming up. I'd like to know how we're going to pay for some of these things too.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful to listen to the words, but then look at the real experience that people in Illinois are having. And again, we've got high unemployment. A lot of the governor's remarks were focused on programs to help people that are out of work, which again is noble, but I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on how do we get people back to work so we don't have people living in poverty, losing their homes, and in need of the services that he's describing. Let's lower tuition at our universities and have that be a focus, in addition to having a focus on increased scholarship money.
Well, I guess execution is always an issue when, historically, with State of the State addresses by governors. And so we'll see how this plays out. But I will say this, that Senator Radonio and I, our commitment is that we will work with Democratic leadership to be responsible in budgeting and also providing a good, positive economic package for Illinois to retain jobs and bring jobs back. We've got a great working relationship. We're going to continue to work together. We're going to be strong on our principles and our constituents.
Well, regardless of who is in office and what party's in office, somebody running for re-election, I'll make the fateful words with all due respect, it's a meaningless campaign speech, regardless of who's giving it. And through that prism, what would you expect? What would one expect from the State of the State address today?
Well, I think there could have been a little more emphasis on the real problems that we are facing and how the governor planned to deal with them, including the fact that we have the temporary income tax that the Democrats imposed and promised would be temporary is set to expire halfway through the fiscal year. Not a single mention of how he intends to handle that, or the fact that we have been rated by Moody's as last in the nation in terms of potential job growth in this state. So there were some very real problems that I think were glossed over. Having said that, it was a political speech, and he did hit some positive notes in it.
So you're disappointed that he didn't talk about whether or not he favored or disfavored rolling back the income tax?
Of course, it's the elephant in the room. Everyone's talking about what's going to happen halfway through this fiscal year. It's the focus of the gubernatorial campaigns, and there was not a single mention of it. Instead, a lot of talk about new programs, and as the representative pointed out, it's absolutely no mention as to how those new programs would be paid for.
Do you anticipate in 3 weeks when he gives his budget speech, will the governor be pushing a progressive income tax?
I think that right now that the Democrats are being very delicate in how they talk about that issue. In a sense, it could be third rail for them at this point. But I will say this, is that the House Republican Caucus is united. We are in opposition to changing the tax code in Illinois. It is going to be the death knell for businesses who are thinking about coming to Illinois, but also people are going to walk out. It's not only just the large corporations, but it's the small businesses, small businessmen and women who are the ones that drive this economy. They are frustrated, they are angry, and if we change the tax code on them, it's just going to say goodbye, Illinois, and welcome to Florida, Indiana. And I've talked to them, and that's the problem, and it's a major problem.
Make no mistake about it. It's not just a change in the tax system. What the Democrats are looking at is a way to get more revenue. And remember, they've gotten over $20 billion more in the last few years, and yet the problems today are as bad or worse than when the supposed temporary tax was imposed.
Remember, the temporary tax was also sold as a way to pay off our state bills. I don't think the public should be so obliging about accepting Democratic's position that we need to change the tax code And they misled Illinois. They misled a lot of people with the temporary taxes.
Is it a foregone conclusion, do you think, that temporary tax will get extended before the end of session?
Before the end of session?
We're in the lame duck session.
Well, that could be the problem.
If it happens, it would be then.
You know, lame duck sessions seem to be more dramatic every 2 years, and this one coming up in January could be the mother of them all if there is going to be a change in the mansion. So I would imagine we'll probably see more of the controversial issues showing up in November and also probably after the first of the year.
Where are your respective caucuses on this minimum wage
increase proposal?
Where are your respective caucuses on this minimum wage?
We're generally leave it where it's at. I mean, as it is, we're already a little out of step, but we don't think that that's where the focus should be. I mean, quite honestly, the minimum wage doesn't lift people out of poverty. Our focus, again, should be on the fundamentals of the economic side of things to create more jobs, and then make sure that we're adequately training people to access living wage jobs. But I think the minimum wage is the wrong discussion.
Our caucus feels the same. You know, I've said before that if there's going to be any type of discussion about it, instead of just telling the business community, take it and leave it, why don't you work with them? A few years ago, there was an effort to negotiate a minimum wage increase, and the business community was prepared to negotiate. I'd like to see them try to do that. I would appreciate it. I think most people in Illinois think that's the right way of going about it. It's maybe unrealistic, but I think that would be a preferred way for us to discuss the issue. But I will say that our caucus is not in support, similar with the Senate Republicans.
Do you think, I mean, Democrats all over the country, from the White House on down, are talking minimum wage?
It's gotcha
like
politics.
They had a conference call and they said, this is how we're going to get them this time around 2014. Do you feel
I feel it's gotcha politics, and that's unfortunate. They're going to use the minimum wage. You know, look, Democrats in Washington are suffering, and I think that their popularity through the country is waning. So they're going to use these issues to, you know, bring up the, stir the emotions of the electorate. And I think that's unfortunate to use that situation and politicize it the way that they are going to do over the next year.
And again, we're not unsympathetic to the fact that, people are making very low wages. But the questions are, why aren't people moving into higher wage jobs? How do we create those jobs, and how do we match the talent to get those jobs? So I think focusing only on minimum wage is a distraction from the real work we need to be doing.
What about these Birth to Thrive programs? You had kind of several things you wanted to do about that. Is that reasonable or affordable?
I think you've answered your question with your question, but it's noble. It's a goal, but the fact is there's a price tag for everything, and we'll see what the governor what he thinks it'll cost and how he intends to pay for it. We're bringing in a lot of money, but the thing is we're also spending a little bit more than what we're bringing in. So. But when we're going to, shift money around, somewhere else, the state government is going to will suffer. There'll be compromises.
There's no price tag on helping Chicago out of its pension mess. Where do the Republicans stand on bills yet to be introduced to reform Chicago's pensions? As the mayor said, had to wait until the larger issue was dealt with.
Well, we have committed, both Jim and I, that we will work in a responsible manner with the Democrats to try to make sure that Chicago, which is obviously very, very important in our state, thrives as well. The bills haven't been introduced. We certainly will work with them, and we expect them to work with us.
Does it have to wait until after the court rules on the statewide pension issues?
I don't believe that the city of Chicago nor the leadership in both chambers are going to wait for the Supreme Court to eventually rule on the issue. I anticipate it'll be a matter that they will seek some resolve this session.
Should we have heard something about that in this speech today?
Probably, especially because of the impact on Chicago. I mean, they really have a very big problem. And again, when you look at their importance within the state economy, we can't afford to have Chicago shut down or go the way of Detroit. So it's critical that we work with them to make sure that
it's
Chicago
going to be
thrives.
as difficult an issue as that we took up last month. It's going to require a lot of heavy lifting, and but Chris and I, Senator Redonio and I, we've committed that we will work with the leadership to find common ground and work with our caucuses to be able to bring some relief to the city of Chicago.
Has there been any discussion on what the overall GRF number is going to be, as there has been in some last years, to work within that number?
Not so far.
And what do you think of that earned income tax credit, the doubling of that?
Well, I guess what is again, it's going to be, I'd like to see how what does it translate into dollars and what the state will not realize from that. It's again, it's an election year. It's these are very, they're noble goals, and we all think some of these things are wonderful, but we have to be mindful of what the cost is on our budget. And when we're going to start cutting fees, and I think a lot of people say it's great that we're going to cut the LLC fees, but the fact is we're going to make up the money. So.
And the same with MAP grants doubling.
I mean, we've struggled to maintain funding for MAP grants. It's a great program. And the Earned Income Tax Credit is a good program. It encourages work. But again, the focus here should be not on expanding programs at the very bottom, but enabling people to earn their way out of poverty by economic expansion.
Well, speaking of something like that, we hear from the Republicans, instead of raising taxes or something along that line, what we want to do is create an environment where businesses succeed, the rising tide carries all ships, businesses locate to Illinois. How long would that take?
Well, to completely change the culture here, we have a lot of work to do, but other states have done it. Our neighboring states, peer states, those that have large urban centers and rural areas as well. When you look at the numbers, the job creation numbers, the ratings of the rating agencies, it's difficult to say that we're over the hump here, which is what the governor was saying today. We've weathered the storm. That's not what the numbers suggest. It suggests we have a lot more work we need to do.
But it can be done. I will just say this, that what we did last month, I think it's progress that a lot of people did not anticipate that we would be able to get done with pensions, and that is a positive step forward. But the fact is we're not going to get our ratings moved up until there's resolution with the courts, so we're still dealing with Illinois has a lower than, a lesser, not a very good credit rating. It's still going to require the borrowing of Illinois is going to be challenging. They're going to go out in the market, I think, next week, and in the next couple of weeks sell $1 billion in bonds, and I'm sure the interest payments are going to be higher than they'd hoped. So it's all part of what's going on over the past 10 years. Make no mistake about it, what's happened since Rob Blagojevich was elected governor. They've held both chambers, and what have they been able to accomplish other than record deficits at every level of state government? You cannot blame the Great Recession anymore when the other states in this country are doing quite well, particularly our surrounding states. So it's just the way that they've been operating, an unfriendly climate to small businesses, and that's unfortunate. But if we're going to change the attitudes in the state, we got to win more seats too. Make no mistakes about it.
Is a 6-month budget something you could live with? Is that responsible?
No. No.
You think it's a likely possibility?
Yes.
Can you expand?
Like we budget for a year, for a fiscal year, and we believe that's a responsible way of doing it. And we will work with the Democratic leadership to work on the FY15 budget. But the fact is, 6 months is let's just see how. There's a variety of reasons why they want to do it. So it's a political year, and you'll have to ask the Speaker and the President whether or not they feel that that's the appropriate way to go. But I think a lump sum budget is even more irresponsible. We're just telling the governor, here's your money and decide what you want to do with it. To me, we're basically abrogating what our responsibilities are down here. We shouldn't be doing it. You won't see support from Republicans in the House in either one of those types of budget requests.
How's it been working with those leaders, especially you? You're fairly new at the top dog. How's it been to work with Madigan and Cullerton lately?
I've worked with the Speaker, the President, and Senate, and Senator Redonio is my state senator. So this has been very easy, but it's a great transition working with the Senate Republicans. But I will say that what we did a few months ago, and I probably sound like a broken record, but I hope that is a template for how we're going to move forward on important issues in Illinois. We were able to hammer out a very difficult issue, but I've got a good working relationship with them. I've been down here for a few years. And we respect them, but we also represent, a number of people in our chambers. So the focus is will have to be a little bit different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Senator Kwame Raoul, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And what is your reaction to the governor's State of the State?
First people have to realize the State of the State address is kind of recounting where we are, where we have been, and where we want to go. It's not a budget address, and so many people have expected more specifics, and I don't think that's the purpose of a State of the State address. But I think the governor did a good job of telling the story of where we've been and where we're headed under his leadership. He talked about taking over at a very difficult time after having 2 consecutive governors go to prison, after dealing with a lot of corruption that kind of crippled our state and had our state spiraling. And he talked about the reforms implemented since he's taken over, from campaign finance reform to ethics reform, pension reform, Medicaid reform, workers' compensation reform, that has changed the trajectory of our state. A lot of people want to characterize it as to how we compare to states nationally right at this point, but they don't want to talk about the trajectory. And I think he did a little bit of that by talking about how over the last 6 months, Illinois has led the Midwest in terms of job creation, and we're projected to continue to do so in the months to come. And that's an important factor to look at in terms of assessing whether we're doing the right things and whether we're headed the right direction. As we progress, just as the president mentioned last night and the governor talked about today, we have to make sure that the masses of people aren't forgotten, not just the wealthy benefit from economic recovery, but hardworking people who would be our middle class have a pathway to the middle class.
Your area, your district represents a lot of downtown Chicago. As I say, when tourists come and see the sights in Chicago, they're spending a lot of time in your district. When you go through your district, how is it doing economically? What's kind of the state of the 13th district?
Well, it depends on what part of the 13th district you're in. If you're on the northern end of my district, which is the downtown area, there are a lot of people benefiting from the economic recovery. If you're on the south side of my district, which covers the South Shore, South Chicago area, you have a lot of people suffering. You have a lot of people who, both the governor and of course the president described last night, people who may be working full time but are still in poverty. And that ought not be. We have to do something about the minimum wage. Senator Lightford has been waving the flag and leading us to try to do something about minimum wage here in the state of Illinois. Of course, a lot of the Republican gubernatorial candidates maybe misspoke or just flip-flopping because they didn't realize how important of an issue it is, not just for Democrats but for Republicans, from people all throughout the state who are working hard trying to support their family. Some of these jobs that may have once been jobs for teenagers are jobs being taken by heads of families that they're trying to support their families, but they're working full time and they're still in poverty, and that ought not be. The president talked about last night that in comparison to the minimum wage under the Reagan administration, the buying power is 20% less. That means we haven't caught up. We haven't kept up with inflation, and the minimum wage is not where it ought to be.
Let me ask you, another irony of history is the day today when we're hearing the State of the State. It's also the 5th anniversary of the impeachment of Rod Blagojevich as governor. You were in the Senate. What are your thoughts over what has transpired over the last 5 years relative to the state of Illinois?
Well, if you can remember back then, under the Blagojevich administration, we had a divide in the legislature. We had one chamber that didn't work well with the other. We had partisan divide. We had regional divide. And since we've done a lot of things that have been bicameral and bipartisan and multi-regional, we've worked collectively to solve some of the state's biggest problems. And you have to credit various members of the legislature for doing their work, but you have to give also credit to the governor as well, because you do need leadership at that executive level.
Lastly, I'll close out for those who don't know. You were carrying the ball, so to speak, for a lot of the big bills in the last 3 or so legislative sessions. Gun control, the pensions, death penalty, which has been eliminated in Illinois. Does anyone stand out that you're most proud of?
The death penalty was the most emotional bill. However, the most complex sort of negotiation and time-consuming negotiation was probably the workers' comp reform bill. and the ability to kind of spend day after day, consecutive day after day, chipping away at it and seeming like it was going to fall apart at certain points and getting it done for an issue that's not a sexy issue, but an important one nonetheless, it was a period of development for me, and it was a period where I was able to get to know certain colleagues and work closely with certain colleagues, such as Representative Bradley. We did a pretty good good cop, bad cop routine to navigate ourselves to getting things done. So, it's difficult to prioritize one thing versus the other. The concealed carry negotiation, a lot of people were confused about what my posture was in a very complex negotiation. It's not as simple as saying you're pro-gun or you're anti-gun, because I don't think it's about that. I don't think people who are anti-gun violence are necessarily anti-gun, and I don't think that at all that people who are pro-gun rights are pro-gun violence. And we had to disabuse people of that opinion that was the case, and get people to talk to each other to kind of navigate ourselves to a compromise bill, which we did.
All right, well, Senator Raul, thanks for joining us. Hope you have another good session.
All right, thank you.
Senator Kirk Dillard, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And as you just heard the governor's State of the State address, what's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were more about what he didn't say than what he did say. He should have told us what's his plan to roll back a 67% income tax increase that he and his party said was going to be temporary. And you got to have a lot of perfume in the governor's press secretary or arsenal to cover up the fact that we are rated 50th by two national surveys for 2014 in economic outlook. I mean, we are second in the nation in out-migration of people, so people are moving with their feet, so they don't see the optimism of Pat Quinn. And we are rated the third worst run state in a Wall Street Journal survey. So things are not as rosy as Pat Quinn says they are, and it's time for a real restructuring of state government and to force the General Assembly to live within its means and make Illinois competitive again with the rest of the Midwest by lowering taxes and having a better regulatory climate. Regulations stifle economic development just like taxes do.
It's no surprise, I would think, to anyone watching the Illinois Channel that you're a candidate again for governor for the Republican nomination. If you had been giving the State of the State address, did you have any initiatives specifically that you would have introduced?
Well, I certainly would have told the people that I'm going to make my lieutenant governor be the repealer, as I call her in Illinois. My running mate, Jill Tracy, representative from Quincy, whose family runs a great company, Dot Foods, that employs a lot of Illinoisans and knows what it's like to have to compete with the rest of America in the Midwest. We need someone that meets with small businesses, large businesses, families, and farmers to show us and tell us what regulations and rules and laws stifle economic development in Illinois. We have got to become competitive with the other states around us, and we need a top-to-bottom overhaul of our tax structure in this state. Our revenue code is archaic. It's geared to an economy of the 1950s and 60s, and the governor should have been talking about that, and I didn't vote for it, but he needed to tell us how is he going to live up to his promise to make his 67% income tax increase temporary. He said it was going to pay down old bills, but we still have $6 billion of old bills hanging around here, $25 billion in new revenue from that tax, and we still have $6 billion of old bills. So it was about as much in his State of the State speech about what he didn't say than what he did.
I'm sure you've been asked by many, other people say, Republicans say they want to have that tax increase that is scheduled to go down in January. There's a lot of people think it won't be, that they'll be extended. But they say if you're going to have that go down, then where are you going to cut? How are you going to make up that $6 to $7 billion in revenue shortfall?
Well, I start with growing the economy. You know, we rate dead last in economic outlook in 2 national surveys, and the best way to put more money in the state treasury is to do it by a growing economy. But I don't grab the premise that Illinois it doesn't have enough revenue. I think we have a spending problem. You've got to go after and get folks who are ineligible to be on Medicaid off of our Medicaid rolls. We spend more on Medicaid than we do on education in Illinois. That's not Kirk Dillard's priority whatsoever. The Democrats have added 500,000 people to Medicaid recently, and it's my job in terms of welfare fraud and waste to get people off of Medicaid who are not eligible by law to be on it. The Democrats won't purge those rolls. We know we have literally tens of thousands of people who are on some form of public assistance or welfare or Medicaid who don't, under law, deserve to be there. And you get better medical care for a single mom or a senior citizen if we purge the rolls, let alone the tax savings. So it's Medicaid and it's growing the economy is how I would put this state back on fiscal footing. I've done it before as Governor Edgar's chief of staff, working with the Democrat legislature, and we're all in this together. We need a two-party system in Illinois. It's been dominated by one party and one city for too long, and it's time to make us the economic capital again of the Midwest and make us competitive against all our Midwestern neighbors economically.
All right, Senator Dewar, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Senator Mike Nolan, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And you just heard the governor's State of the State address. What are your thoughts?
Well, Terry, what I heard from the governor, my takeaway is essentially that we do basically 3 things here in the state of Illinois. We educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate. If we do not educate, we will medicate, and if we do not medicate, we will incarcerate. He spoke about workforce development. He talked about putting more money in education, particularly in preschool, where we can intervene, if you will, in a sense, in a child's life for the better, to put them on a track that is going to make them productive members of society, particularly those who are at risk, many times in our more urban areas, such as the area that I represent in the Elgin-Schaumburg area. So, and I think that he's committed to that through his Birth Through 5 Years initiative that he announced today. I think that he's committed to doing that by trying to raise the minimum wage, which I will support, and the Earned Income Tax Credit, all which will put more money in our economies, help money circulate, and help broaden our economic base here in the state of Illinois. We're on the road to recovery. There's a lot more to do. I think the governor went a long way to assist in that further recovery today.
On the minimum wage, what do you say to those maybe small businessmen who say, where am I supposed to come up with more money? I have a pizza place maybe, I got to compete with frozen pizza in the grocery store and I can only charge so much. What do you say to those, or in a larger context, that it would make the state of Illinois less competitive?
Well, I say that when there's more money circulating in our economy, and you know, it was interesting that President Obama drew attention to somebody who owned a pizza parlor in Minnesota last night, explaining how they raised their minimum wage, the wage that they pay at that work site, to $10 an hour. What that means is that more families can actually afford those pizzas. There's more money circulating in the economy. They're going to sell more of those pizzas. They're going to be able to expand perhaps their businesses and hire more people, which will only have a multiplier effect to the positive for our economy here in the state of Illinois.
And as we stand here, it is the 5th anniversary of the impeachment of Governor Blagojevich, and only 5 years ago that President Obama. So it was kind of an odd period for Illinois, where we went from the election of a president to the impeachment of a governor.
Right.
What are your thoughts looking back over those 5-year period and where we were and where the state has come?
We've come a long way. The governor mentioned some of the reforms that we made. As a matter of fact, I had the great honor of sponsoring the recall bill for governors here in the state of Illinois. It's now part of our Constitution, where if we have a governor who is behaving badly, such as our former governor had, that the people, through the power of petition, will be able to recall their governor. And I think that's one measure. We've made a number of other improvements with respect to campaign finance reform here in the state of Illinois. I think that we have improved the political atmosphere to help encourage individuals who are good, decent people to come to government and to do the important work that is before the state of Illinois.
All right, Senator, thanks for joining us.
You're most welcome. All right.
Also, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. What's your reaction to the governor's state of the state?
I'm struggling to know if he lives in the same state I live in.
And why do you say that?
Well, we have made remarkably good strides this past year. However, it's not time to celebrate and change directions. It is time to continue doing what we've been doing, take bigger steps, deeper cuts, and move forward in that regard. I'm listening to the governor outline that he wants to spend more money on new initiatives, which is exactly what we do not need to do at this particular point in time. I'm afraid he's spending the savings that he is noting in our pension reform. I'd like to remind him that we have a case in court that we're not exactly sure whether or not this will be constitutional. Let's not spend that savings yet. I'd like to note to him that our businesses are leaving in droves to other states. In fact, a recent report that they just gave to me today says that 2 moving companies are indicating that they have more work in the state of Illinois than any other state. That tells me that people are leaving, and with them leave great companies, good jobs. So I'm listening to this, and I'm somewhat disturbed and depressed that we're not continuing in the path that I thought that we started, which is to look at more efficiencies, to look at programs that aren't working. I've served on budgeting for results. It's a gubernatorial appointment for the last 4 years. I thought we were working in that direction, and what I'm hearing is contradictory to that.
Senator Jim Claiborne, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. As you heard the governor give a depiction of the state of the state, what are your thoughts?
Well, obviously, I'm very impressed with the fact that he's touching on creating jobs and continuing to grow the economy. And I do think that he's correct in growing the economy. You grow from the bottom up. You make sure those individuals who have traditionally been locked out of the process and don't have the skills, you provide the skills for them. And talking about educating our youth, particularly our early childhood, 0 to 5, early on in their life, and giving them the tools they need to be successful early on, developing study skills, and really helping them understand the importance of an education really will go a long way to play a vital role in their life later on to come. Very impressed with the fact that education is in the forefront. Also addressing the issue of the minimum wage, which truly would affect those same children by increasing the productivity of their parents and giving them an opportunity to earn a little more livable wage, which provides for them, and also will help them stress the importance of education to their children and making them productive. I think the governor's on the right track. I'm not sure how we're going to pay for all of this, but that's why we're here, and that's why we'll move forward in this budget to see if there's room to add some of these programs or to find ways to address these programs.
As we stand here at the end of a year from now, at the end of this year, the tax increase on income tax is going to go back largely to where it was. That might cost the state somewhere in the area of $7 billion or so in annual revenue. What are your thoughts on if that can be rolled back or if we would have to keep it?
Obviously, that's a discussion that we have to have over the course of these next 4 to 5 months and find out. I mean, if it's just like with anything that we do in the government. Those who pay, including myself, a taxpayer, we're entrusted to make sure these funds are spent in a manner that's beneficial to all that who pay, to grow our economy, to provide essential services, schools, roads, health care, and those things that people use on a daily basis to sustain their livelihood. So that's a discussion we must have. I know that there are individuals on both sides. At this point in time, personally, I need to see how we will continue to use the funds and make a determination what my position will be going forward.
Let me ask you, lastly, your Senate district would, like all Senate districts, takes in a number of communities, but I think East St. Louis is at the major community in your district, if I'm not mistaken. How are things in East St. Louis these days?
You know, things are improving, but we have a long way to go. You know, we're trying to get our school system in place, back, being productive and providing the quality of education that it needs to for the individuals I serve. We also have to be a little more aggressive in creating jobs and opportunities. You know, people act and respond differently when they have a good paying job. They have a lot of hope, they see the future's bright, and they're willing to invest more in their community as well as in their personal lives and their children's lives. So we have to continue to look to create jobs to give our children and our families hope.
All right, Jim Claiborne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, appreciate you. Good seeing you.
Senator Dale Ryder, thanks for joining us. As you heard the governor's State of the State address, what are your thoughts?
Well, the State of the State is always the traditional opportunity for the governor to do a little cheerleading or recounting of what he thinks are the bright spots of the last calendar year. But kind of once we got beyond that, I think that the portrait that the governor is trying to paint about what Illinois looks like is significantly different than the subject that he's actually painting. The governor's not talking about unemployment issues. He's not talking about the lack of economic opportunity. He wasn't talking about the backlog of bills. He wasn't talking about other issues that are serious challenges that we have to deal with here in Springfield. Instead, the governor was talking about expanding the reach of government programs through more government spending, which obviously comes with more taxes. The governor was talking about increasing the minimum wage and building the middle class. But our collective experience, Terry, not just in Illinois, but all across the country, is you don't build the middle class. You don't raise economic boats across the board, if you will, by government mandate and by more government spending. You do that by allowing individuals and families to spend more of the hard-earned money that they've made and let the economy flourish and let the private sector create those jobs. At the end of this year, Illinoisans will breathe a collective sigh of relief, at least they're supposed to, because they'll enjoy a much-deserved tax cut. And that is the walking back of most of the tax increase that was passed 3 years ago and signed into law by this governor. That's what we need to start rebuilding the Illinois economy, is giving Illinoisans back more of their hard-earned dollars. And yes, trimming spending at the same time to make sure you have a balanced budget. That's the way to grow the economy. That's the way to rebuild the economic middle class the governor's talking about.
For those who question if we can afford to cut back on that tax increase, as you noted, it's going to largely go back, not exactly to where it was, but largely go back in January. What do you say to those who say we can't afford to cut back, we have to extend it because it would cost the state $7 billion in revenue, and we're still building up a backlog of unpaid bills as we are?
Well, to those who say we can't afford it, the we that they need to be concerned about is the we back home, not the we walking around in this building. The simple fact is, the fact that what we should look at in whether or not people can afford to allow the tax increase to sunset is, again, the unemployment numbers, which are higher than all of our neighboring states around us. The unemployment figure, which is higher than states like New York, California, Texas. Okay, Illinoisans, the hardworking Illinoisans who pay the bills to support this place, they can't afford not to have that tax cut go in place. And that's why we need to be for it. And that's why, yes, we need to trim spending in order to get down to that point. We need to be honest about that. And the governor, as the leader of the state, needs to be first and foremost about, okay, if he believes building the middle class means building economic opportunity, then what's the plan to allow that tax cut to go into place and bring down government spending to make sure we have a balanced budget?
Was there anything you didn't hear that you would have liked to have heard?
I think the opening of an honest dialogue with lawmakers, not just of the Republican Party, but with his own party, about the fact that some serious choices and sacrifices need to be made, not by the people out in voter land, because they're the ones paying the higher taxes. They're the ones enduring the growth in government. But the people here, that sometimes priorities have to change, and our priority now shouldn't be more government spending, more government regulation. It ought to be scaling back on those things, again, to allow individuals and families back home to keep more of their hard-earned money and spend the money as they deem fit.
All right, Senator Ryder, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Terry. Good seeing you.
The Illinois Channel's coverage of legislative issues is underwritten in part by AARP Illinois.
Illinois Channel salutes our advisory council members, leaders in business, education, law, medicine, and other fields from across Illinois.
Hi, I'm Bill Fleischle, Executive Vice President of the Illinois Petroleum Marketers Association. I'm also proud to say that I'm a member of the Illinois Channel Advisory Council. Proud because the Illinois Channel not only connects you and me to Illinois legislative hearings on major issues or press conferences by the governor or the Supreme Court cases, but just as important as covering government functions, the Illinois Channel also covers leaders outside of government. They allow organizations like the Illinois Petroleum Marketers a chance to share our views with the citizens of the state on the impact proposed laws will have on Illinois businesses and Illinois consumers. Of course, you can always accept our viewpoints or reject them, but at least with the Illinois Channel, you will hear them. And because their coverage is unedited, it won't be just a passing soundbite. I'm Bill Fleischle. I watch the Illinois Channel because I want to keep current on the leaders and the issues affecting our state. I hope you do too. The Illinois Channel, it's there for all of us.
Next from Chicago, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz talks with an expert, Miguel Silva, about the growing economic and cultural ties between the United States and South America. This runs about 30 minutes.
Watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game, and we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because, as I promised, we have as our guest Miguel Silva. He is the head of your own consulting firm?
Yes, I'm a senior managing director of a political consulting firm. We sold that to an American firm called FTI Consulting.
Okay, so you're now part of FTI Consulting.
So I'm now part of FTI Consulting.
All right, and most importantly, as I said, he is a fellow. We'll talk about that as to what it means, but he's a fellow at the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. You can see our surroundings a little different than our tame studio. We're sitting here in a conference room of on the second floor of the Institute of Politics, located on 57, near the corner of 57th and Woodlawn in Hyde Park. David Axelrod is the director of this august institution. And so, Miguel, just start out, because the most important thing we're probably thinking of, people are focusing a lot on Obamacare as we tape this on December 4th, 2013. They think of foreign policy about Iran and, what was the United States deal a good one? Are we going to be less or more safe in terms of the nuclear capability of Iran? I have to say, I think most people would say the furthest thing from their mind would be the foreign policy or relations of the United States with Latin America, South America, with the exception of immigration and the problems we have or don't have at the border. So do I have that right, and do they have that right, or should people in America be more focused on something you know a great deal about, the relationship between the United States and South America and Latin America?
Well, Jeff, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm really glad to be here. You've been in a couple of my seminars, and you've seen the excitement that talking about Latin America brings on within students in the University of Chicago, mostly Americans. And I think it is because it's a fascinating time in the region. I think Latin America is full of great news. Latin America is full now of success stories. And I think that in U.S.-Latin America relations, something like the prodigal son happens. Because we're the normal ally, because we're there, because we're part of what used to be called in the Cold War the backyard.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
Latin America. The Latin American allies.
How many countries are in Latin America?
Well, the Organization of American States, which unites all of them, including Canada and the U.S., has 34 members. If you add Cuba, which is not a member of the OAS, you will find that non-U.S. Canada Americas is about 33 countries now. Some of them are Anglo-Caribbean. But you're talking about economies.
You're Colombian.
I'm Colombian, yes. I was born in Bogota, raised in Bogota. And for example, I'll start with that example, Jeff. I think it's very interesting. Because I have lived a life where when I was 30 years old and I was in government, I had bodyguards and a bulletproof car. And anyone who was trying to be in government was risking his life.
This is when you were 30 years old.
Yeah, at
So simply
92.
20 years ago.
Yes.
The Bill Clinton era, the
Yes,
start of
exactly.
the Bill Clinton era. Okay.
In 2000, I went back. I came to the States for some years and worked for a political consulting firm. I went to run a magazine, and there and then, I had a bulletproof car, and my wife had a bulletproof car, and my kids could not walk in the streets. Now, 10 years on, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, you have a country where I walk to the office, my kids walk to school, or not to school because it's far away, but they do walk to college, the medium.
So it's much safer.
It's much safer.
What happened? What changed?
Well, a lot of things happened. I think that there has been a big effort of bringing people out of poverty with stronger economies. There has been a huge collaborative effort between the U.S. and Colombia. And it's an interesting effort because it's been a bipartisan effort from the U.S. and a success story in the war against drugs. The guerrillas and the cartels have been either completely eliminated or weakened. There's an ongoing peace process with the last guerrilla in Colombia. Now you have booming cities and you have 5% growth every year. 1 year ago, the Wall Street Journal voted on Medellin as the world's most innovative city in the world against Tel Aviv and Sydney.
Oh, okay.
And if you go there, I mean, 20 years ago, you could not say, and this was a colleague of mine who's running the Center for Latin America at the Atlantic Council used this line today in the seminar. He said, 20 years ago, you could not say the word Medellin without the word cartel, and now you cannot say the word Medellin without the word success.
So there's no main cartel
without the word, no.
That cartel is gone.
No, the main cartels today are in Mexico. Colombia does play, unfortunately, a role in that chain, but I think as time goes by, that will be less the case. But I think my point here was there's excitement to find in Latin America. Brazil is a booming economy. Brazil is the 6th or 7th economy in the world. Mexico is the 14th economy in the world. Colombia and Argentina are 26 and 30.
So these are a block of countries that there's some affinity with in terms of democracy, and also much friendlier to the West, much friendlier to the United States. Would you say? Yes. Would you say that Brazil? Would they be in that category?
Yes.
Argentina,
very
Colombia. What else? What other
I'll
countries?
differentiate a little bit because I think you have 570 million people in Latin America, which are Western and share the same beliefs that the Americans have. So suddenly, you have a neighborhood that's energy rich and that shares your main values. Now, having said that, there I would say at least two big dividing blocks in Latin America. Okay. One is clearly U.S. ally, clearly free traders, clearly pro-democracy with own checks and balances in their power systems. Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Chile. That's the new alliance for the Pacific. But they're not only
what are they? Mexico,
Colombia, Peru, and Chile.
And Argentina you don't put in there?
No. So these four signed an alliance that will not only be free trade, that's easier, it's going to mean the free movement of people among those four countries.
Something like the European Union.
Exactly.
And do those countries all tend to tilt left in terms of being more socialistic, less capitalistic?
Yes. It's what you could call a new populism, new wave of populism. They differ between each other also.
You didn't put them in either block, did they?
Brazil is an interesting case, Jeff, because Brazil is playing like now China is looking for their role as a global player. You see Petrobras
recently named to do the Olympics in what year?
They do the Olympics and the World Cup, the soccer World Cup next year.
Is it next year?
Next year is the World Cup.
And then
I know Olympics, because I'm planning to go.
Okay. Olympics are 2016, is that what it is?
I'm not sure when the Olympics are.
But it's coming up.
I follow the soccer.
Yeah. You did? Did you bring your soccer ball?
Yeah, the soccer ball, well, you lost the soccer ball.
Did you lose it?
It's around here.
We're going to get Miguel back here.
One great thing that happened with soccer is that the Colombia team is in. So I don't know if we're going to win, but we are clearly a part of
Are you
the
a big soccer
World Cup.
player?
I mean, not a big
But
soccer
it is big.
player.
Soccer is big in Latin America. And
Soccer
South
is
America.
huge in South America. Huge in Latin America. Baseball is bigger in the Caribbean, and there are some great Colombian baseball players.
We were talking about Brazil, and you're saying Brazil is sort of trying to find its identity, right?
Well, Brazil's
are they more capitalist or socialist?
Brazil is totally capitalist with two socialist presidents, Lula and Dilma.
But it's
very
totally
socialist.
Capitalist, even though they have socialist president.
It is mostly.
Why is that?
It is because I think that what they've done is a very aggressive public policy of support for the poor with good social programs, but they have kept mostly the market economy. That
is it a democracy?
It is a complete democracy.
Are all those countries you mentioned before in the bloc associated with Colombia, Peru, Chile, Colombia, and Mexico, right?
Yes.
Or those are democratic countries,
yes,
democracies.
the four of them. Very
the other
strong.
countries tend to be less democratic.
The other countries, I would say,
I
would take Argentina out. Argentina has had a traditional democracy. They run into frequent waves of populism.
But in general, it's
very democratic. Okay. Then you have Venezuela, who's completely destroyed all democratic rights of the minorities.
Although they have
the opposition.
A strong opposition. I heard that in a seminar. Yes, I learned that year. Look, folks, you should just interrupt to say these seminars are run by the fellows. The fellows generally come here for a day or two for 10 successive weeks. Okay, but Miguel is a little different. He's been here almost all the time for 10 weeks. A little bit because of the distance going back and forth.
Correct.
It's not like going to Washington.
I'm a Hyde Park neighbor right now.
So you've become a Hyde Park native in a sense, okay? But these fellows run seminars at least once a week where they meet, usually at lunch. Actually, it's great. And this is open to the public. It's mostly undergrads who will come here, but occasionally you get alumni.
You get a lot of grads, and it's interesting, Jeff. You get members of the community too. I'll give you an interesting example. When the government shut down, I had a bunch of people from EPA coming to my seminar.
Oh, because they had nothing to do, because they shut it down. And they had want to do something interesting.
Yes, that's
But I mean, if they had their choice, if they didn't have to go to work at the EPA every day, they would be here.
Yes.
They wouldn't be playing soccer,
That
much
is
as they
correct.
might like it. They wouldn't be having coffee somewhere. They would be coming to a seminar conducted by Miguel Silva, right?
Well,
at the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. No, but very seriously, folks, these are great programs. I've gone to a number of them. Amy Walter has been from the national editor of the Cook Political Report, is a fellow.
She's fantastic.
She's come on our show. We've had you on now. We had, Steve
Edwards.
Steve Edwards. Blanked on his name for a moment. And
did you interview Robin Carnahan, the former Secretary of State of Missouri?
No, but I would like to. I did get to see her.
She's fantastic.
She had who was the U.S. Senator who was out with
Vin
her?
Weber.
No, there's another U.S. Senator, Democratic Senator, who was at a program.
Oh, that was probably Tom Daschle. He was here too.
But you're mentioning all these people. So we're giving you a flavor of this is happening right here in Hyde Park. And you folks should drop in. There are these they have national speakers coming. So you have a speakers program, you have a fellows program, and you have an internship program. But back to your story, back to what you're talking about, these two blocks. So you have the block of Colombia, Mexico, Peru, and
Chile.
And that block is called?
It's called the Pacific Alliance.
Pacific Alliance. So, and how long has that existed?
No, it's starting. It's more a process than it is a reality. It's signed. But a lot of things have to happen until there is free movement of peoples among those four countries.
It's
200 million people. Can you imagine?
And how does it interact with you? How does that affect the United States?
I think the point there it's a huge opportunity for the United States.
For trading?
Because not only for trading, I think the United States should promote success stories in the region. I think the United States should do what it's starting to do, which is treat the Latin American countries as not equals, but as grown-ups.
As peers.
As peers, and have more constructive conversations. The United States could completely change, for example, its energy balance if it were more constructive with Latin America. It could have most of its resources coming from the region. I mean, there's enormous opportunity there, I think, for Americans.
What specifically, if you were king, and you could say to either the Barack Obama, president, or the Congress, the House or the Senate, what would you advise them to do to implement what you're talking about?
Well, the first thing is, I would say, you're too worried in the urgent, which you should, of course. I mean, Pakistan and Syria and Iran, that's the urgent. But deal with the urgent. But start looking at what's also important. You have 570 million people that look up to the United States.
In South America and in
Latin America. And if you poll all around Latin America, even in those countries where the government is anti-American, the citizens are pro-American.
They are. Why? What is it about
because the U.S. has had enormous influence in as a culture, and of course there's television, there's movies, but there's also the news. I mean, we're in the orbit of the empire. I mean, we're in the orbit. It's like when the Roman Empire and you have Judea or Antioquia, or we're in the orbit. We're there. We share the beliefs. The main beliefs we share, the U.S. and Latin America share the beliefs of the power of the people, government by the people, that, minorities have rights.
And so what does it do with these other countries, this bloc that's less friendly?
That's interesting.
What's the name of that bloc again?
It's ALBA.
Okay. ALBA.
And there's,
And ALBA includes?
there are a couple of other ideas coming up.
This is Ecuador.
That's Venezuela, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Cuba, Bolivia. Those are the most important ones.
Can the United States do anything with Venezuela? Can it help? There is, as I mentioned in a seminar you were conducting, I learned about the opposition in Venezuela. It has come very close in some elections.
1.5%.
Right. I don't think people realize that. So this autocratic regime of first Hugo Chavez and now his brother, is that right?
Nicolas Maduro, no. But a friend of his brother.
Right, a friend of his brother. They almost got toppled. So could the United States do anything, or could they get involved in helping topple them, or would that be counterproductive?
I think the United States has to build bridges with the people of Latin America, besides dealing with the governments of Latin America.
The people. Well, how do they do that?
With the people. Well, I think there are many ways to do it. I think there are many ways of promoting friendship between countries, of promoting investment and information and education exchanges and scholarships, and a lot of.
And they can still do this with the ALBA countries, even though they're hostile to the United States.
Yes.
The governments are hostile.
In political terms, at times it's good that the United States doesn't do anything, because when the states, for example, would say, we like the opposition in Venezuela because they are democratic. The government is not democratic. It'll hurt the opposition. It will not help the opposition.
But what about, there's a lack of freedom in these countries. We have the technology. We used to have radio-free Europe. So when we had these Iron Curtain countries in Eastern Europe, which were dominated by the old Soviet Union, we could bust through there. We'd have radio-free Europe. We could give these people news. Radio-free Europe was not looked at as biased propaganda from the United States. It was looked at as balanced news.
Well,
could we do something like that? I
don't think that's
or is that not needed?
I don't think. First of all,
does Venezuela have a free press? I don't think so, right?
Well, it's two questions. Yeah. So one, does Venezuela have a free press? Right. It has a free press, but the government has taken over most of the electronic media outlets.
Well, how can it be free if they've taken it over?
Well, some of them are not government owned. Okay. So you know what these guys do? That's a problem, which is. They keep some of the free press, or in Ecuador, for example, the press is supposedly free, but laws against the freedom of expression.
They put people in jail.
They put people in jail. Yes, or they fine people. So there are different ways of acting.
So how can the United States help make that press?
Well, I think
more free.
I'll give you a couple of examples. One, I think there's a big role for countries like the States or the European Union or even the Pacific Alliance to strengthen civil society all across Latin America. Because it's civil society, the one that's going to change that circumstance. It's not going to be an AWAC plane with emissions of news programs in Spanish with U.S. accent.
So what do they do to strengthen civil society?
I think there are many ways to strengthen civil society. There are many organizations in civil society, from unions and teachers and students. Students, for example, in Venezuela have been critical in strengthening the opposition, critical in putting some limits to what the government wants to do, critical in defeating the government in certain referendums.
But what I keep on trying to understand is what can the United States, Congress, President, or non-government organizations, NGOs, what can they do specifically? I understand you're saying there are these opposition groups, there are students, but what can the United States and its organized
Jeff,
groups
you're
do?
looking for a good answer on a unilateral act, and I don't think that's the way. I think there used to be the Organization of the American States that has this the charter, the democratic charter of the Americas, and that used to work. I think it's proven to be useless now. The Organization of American States, or the Americas hemisphere as a whole, has to find ways in which the collectivity, not the U.S., can point out to those countries that are on the offside and can say that is a moment where you're not protecting the rights of the minorities, you're crossing the line. That is unacceptable. And to have some, I don't know, trade sanctions, but collectively,
So
when
the
you
US
do it
has to be
unilaterally,
part of the OAS or help
it
with,
is
or
part
work
of the
with the
OAS.
Pacific Alliance.
I
You're
think
saying they have
that's
to
the
work
way.
multilaterally.
I think the way is to act multilaterally. That has proven it's sometimes very difficult, but I think it's proven to work and to have longer effect rather than unilateral acts. But I think I don't want us to lose like the picture, because I think Latin America in general is a success story right now. It's a good story. 50 to 70 million people have come out of poverty in the last decade. Most of the countries are growing 3, 4, 5% per year, which is not the case in Europe, and it's not the case here.
Right, 2% at best in the United States.
Most of the countries have inflation of 1, 2, 3%. Most of the countries have unemployment of 7, 8%. I mean, we're talking.
So you're talking most countries, not just the Pacific Alliance. You're saying Latin America, South America, it now has a stable. Most of the countries have stable, growing economies.
Yes.
Their median income is still quite a bit less than the United States.
Yes.
But the growth rate in those countries, the economic growth
Yes,
rate,
there are
is exceeding
many
the United
which
States
are an
and Europe.
exception, but the bigger countries are doing fairly well.
And what do you attribute that? Because that wasn't the case 20 or 30 years ago.
Well, I think we were all pretty shielded from the global crisis. We were not shielded in the sense that our biggest buyers were hurt, and if your buyers are hurt,
you're hurt.
You're hurt. But we were shielded because our financial sectors were not involved in the subprime crisis.
Right.
We did not have that. We
well,
did not
talk a
have
little
those
bit-
toxic assets.
What are the financial sectors like that are doing well? I mean, you mentioned the number of airplanes that are sold out of Brazil. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. You know, if you fly an airplane in the U.S. And I'm stealing these examples from my dear friend Peter Schechter from the Latin American Center at the Atlantic Council, and I heard that who was in the seminar today.
Just today,
and
on
it's
December
fascinating
4th.
examples. If you're in the States and you fly less than 300 miles, there's a 7-to-1 chance that you're flying a Brazilian-made plane, Embraer. In the last 40 years, the largest investment in steel, $6.9 billion, has been from an Argentine steel company called Tequint. And there are a bunch of good examples like that.
Is this a reflection of the free market? Are these countries
Yes.
that are doing well?
It's also a reflection.
Are you a believer in the free market?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And why are you believing in the free market?
Well, because I think that there's good evidence that when the government is all over the place, getting involved in the economy, it doesn't work.
So you know this guy. Put that up if we can get that.
I know that guy.
Free to Choose by Milton Ambrose Friedman is kind of an icon. Of course, he's
Yes.
deceased now, but he was dominant. Well, he was probably the most important economist, Milton Friedman, in the 20th century. Don't you think?
Yes, but I have one
And that book was, of course, Free to Choose. Do you believe in free to choose?
Yes, definitely. But I have a caveat on the Friedman U Chicago thing, and this is the following. I think that in Latin America, the state plays a very important role in the protection of the poorest, and it has to have. Because I'll give you an example, not to talk about Mexico and Brazil, the largest countries in population. Colombia, 45 million people. We've been extremely successful we had, I don't know, 40, 50% of people below the poverty line. We now have 14% of people below the poverty line.
In Colombia?
Yes. Millions of people have gone out of the poverty line in the last 5 to 10 years.
Economic mobility up?
Yes.
And
millions.
That's a free market example.
Now, if you,
Isn't that a free market example?
And it is. But now,
I would say, if you look at socialist countries, you don't have that kind of economic mobility.
Yes.
Okay.
But you still have 14% of 45 million people.
Well, as you point out, you want to assist people who are low income and help them elevate themselves, work with them so they can escape poverty.
So
this guy, one thing I'll say, people don't realize, Milton Friedman had the idea of the negative income tax. So instead of having a vast welfare program, if your income is low or non-existent, just like you fill out on a postcard, a very simple thing, pay your taxes, fill out on a postcard you have no income, and the government will send you money. Because he thought, although people, that's how you instill growth in them. You rely on them to make good choices.
Yes.
You don't, some will make bad choices. So Friedman was a big believer in assisting low-income people and treating them with dignity.
Yeah. Well, in a strange way, some countries do that, but I wonder, direct subsidies to people in that way end up creating a political clientele for Chavez and those guys.
You always incentivize, in other words, and you structure that. So as they make income, they keep a very large portion of it. We sometimes in the United States have a vast array of programs, food stamps, healthcare stamps, other stamps. And so when these people find a job, they start paying 70% of their new income to the government.
Well,
so his idea is incentivize, give people an incentive to get off of the assistance program by always looking at what do they get marginally by getting a job. I mean, your point was that Latin America is growing rapidly.
Yes.
The economies are doing well.
Yes.
And I simply interjected, and I think in a significant part from also being at your seminars, I picked up a strong belief in the free market, and that the free market in these countries, in Latin and South America, has helped them have high economic growth rates and has helped people escape from poverty.
Yes.
And you agree with all that?
I agree with that.
Okay. And basically,
I also believe that the United States has a role to play, given the size of its economy, in helping these countries with free trade and that.
But you also benefit from imports because if you're able to buy products from the United States at lower prices, these individuals benefit.
Which is the case.
In fact, people would say, although it sounds, you don't hear this commonly, but Friedman would tell you, it's imports that help countries grow much more than exports.
And that's, for example, Colombia signed a free trade agreement with the United States exactly because of that.
Right. Well, I very much want to thank Miguel Silva. He, of course, as I said, works as Chief of Staff to the President of Colombia. He's been involved in the media. He's, for the last 10 years, been involved in political consulting, had his own firm, now is part of a larger firm. But most importantly, for the last 10 weeks, he's been a fellow at the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. And everybody should come down here and visit the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. And when you do that, whether you go to a seminar, to a speaker's program, whether you get yourself or your kids involved in internships, you walk up to David Axelrod and you said, Jeff Berkowitz sent you. All right.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks very much.
Or Miguel Silva sent you. All right. Come on. When you come back to Chicago, you come back and see us.
I will definitely. Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. The Illinois Channel salutes our advisory council members, leaders in business, education, law, medicine, and other fields from across Illinois.
Hi, I'm David Yepsen, Director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute at Southern Illinois University. Here at the Illinois State Capitol is where Paul Simon spent much of his public career. as a member of the Illinois House, the Illinois Senate, and as Lieutenant Governor. It was a career that led him to the United States Senate and a run for the White House. One of Paul's living legacies is the institute that now bears his name. He believed that citizens needed to be informed and engaged. That's why the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute works to develop solutions to some of the most difficult challenges in the public policy arena, like ethical conduct in government, fair drawing of legislative district lines, and responsible citizenship. Paul Simon's belief in good government and citizen involvement is why he joined with former Governor Jim Edgar to help launch the Illinois Channel. Today, the Illinois Channel programming is seen from Carbondale to Chicago, from Quincy to Champaign. It connects citizens across Illinois to events here at the Capitol. Perhaps Paul said it best when he told a gathering of lawmakers back in 2000 why Illinois needed an Illinois Channel.
The whole premise of a democracy is that we're going to be reasonably well informed as a public in order to make decisions. And this adds to the base of democracy.
I'm David Yepsen, Director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute at Southern Illinois University. I watch the Illinois Channel, and I hope you do too. The Illinois Channel, it works for all of us.